Leave me in the comments which is the team you are playing the most and you like it the most without. I have to say that to this day he has not only given a complete upgrade to Genshin's goal, but that the current talents that we can all enjoy are just 7 and 70 elementary. And the ulti die. To imagine the potential with the crown talents that we will have in quite a few weeks. Since the boss has to grow up, and yet it has already come to upgrade and improve. Of what we have. Get ready because you come absolute film, and today we're going to see all the MAVUIKA teams. So much support that in fact, it is where more variance it has, more it contributes, and more it makes grow. All the list and all the versatility of equipment Genshin Impact has, but more important. Your DPS prime computer and all variants if you don't have Sitlali Shilonen or not. You want to share Bennett. So take a seat, take a meal, take a good company, and you're going to watch the movie. Bigger apart from the build, if you haven't seen it this way, go see MAVUIKA's build and the Spanish-speaking community of Genshin Impact. Leave a good like, a good also Bennett subscribe, leave a good comment to the algorithm. Thanks for enjoying watching the video channel. Thanks for all the love and support. Remember that it doesn't cost you anything that is free. I recommend push it to the video. And remember that once a day the lunar blessing draws are active to participate. Just do all this which is free. Subscribe with bell, comment too. The algorithm and give like to the video counts all the videos that upload on the platforms. So the more you support more possibilities, the more you say it's good, and it's very good if you are eating it. Thanks for choosing the channel to enjoy and entertainers and about. I'll improve and learn in Genshin. Welcome and guests to the directs and go with the MAVUIKA team score Nimjaya. Well, really if it's a Xiangling 5 stars, much better than we expected. And it had a little change before. You know that when there's a beta version, that's already the final one. Many people sharing leaks post out, and I included myself in YouTube, I have commented this saying this is the final version, and MAVUIKA will have no changes. Disclaimer sometimes. Have changes because effectively this has happened and for good. Explain it in your will. And now I explain even more carefully. MAVUIKA closed the final phase of beta, in a way, and when they left Genshin, they applied one last change to him for the better he never was. Reflected in beta, and is that its elementary ability now makes a hit in the case of more than he did in beta. In beta, he did 6 hits to Chero for 12 seconds. Of elementary ability, which did not allow Chero to vaporize all Moalani hits, for example, or match a little weird with some team, and do one what I did were 8 hits. Every 2 seconds, 16 seconds, now on leaving MAVUIKA as support outside the field does 7 hits to Chero, which is 14 seconds of elementary skill, which with 14 now, if you have full synergy of all teams and makes one gives you 120 points of noctambulism, which allows you make 10 hits and your elementary skill, hard in field between 19 and 20 seconds having. Counts that the cooldown of the elementary ability is only 15, but of carry the ulti has 18 of off. Cooldown with which MAVUIKA has 18 cooldown, because I explain this because Chero is even better. Of what was expected, and of course has 14 seconds like Xiangling, but does 1. Has 10 ticks that are almost 20 seconds, so the difference of MAVUIKA supports with the Kone. Out of the field is huge, is abysmal out jokes that is very, very powerful now. I'm going to count though. Not everyone has the cone. I'm going to count the cone to explain all the teams well, but to have. Since you can play, and there will be no changes perfectly with the Chero, but I repeat your optimal prime. To be support is that cone. Well, we start with the teams that in the end is a Xiangling 5 stars. Where he really does the same thing as Xiangling, very similar, and improves it, and by not much more than a due. Improve, but in a standard way, because I say this, because there are teams that have improved that do not make sense and quiet, because in addition in this video, I will also comment the Raiden National that we were all at the expense of checking whether or not the new Raiden National works. With Fiorina, Raiden, MAVUIKA, Bennett, spoiler, you will carry a very good surprise. And some others. Variants as a surprise also with Novilette that we had Novilette's Hydro Monkey. But beware that MAVUIKA may also come here to surprise, well, the honorable mentions of the principle of teams that have improved with MAVUIKA, considering that they played with Xiangling but have not improved as much as those who come after. I will go from less to more as always. First, the teams of Vape or International, the Vape of Ayato or the International of Cakes. Here on these teams have received a new prime, not only because the old variant is the core of it, Xiangling, Katsuha, and Tartaglia, or Ayato, but obviously, MAVUIKA improving. Xiangling allows use, also enable Xilonen instead of Kazuha, and this also makes the core a little bit more solid, even if we don't have Kazuha's gathering, but the cooldowns of the team are much more optimal because Xiangling had 20, MAVUIKA has 18, which gives you damage in less time. And Xilonen also has 15, which suits them very well. But Cakes has a rotation more. In this team, Ayato not because he has 20, with which Tartaglia improved a little more. And you can play Tartaglia, Xilonen, MAVUIKA, Bennett. If your Xilonen is C2, but at Cheryl, it would be better Tartaglia, Kazuha. MAVUIKA Bennett is the first Norifica mention, and has improved a little bit, is fine, and the main pies. They appreciate it. They have a new team for whoever wants to play support to MAVUIKA, then Alexino. Monopiro Alekino. I will speak it in another video apart, because Citlali has come to improve books very concretely to 3 characters who are to MAVUIKA as dedicated support Alekino in Melts that I will now explain because it has some complications that you study most. The goal part of the game, you will know that it is there in the line to work. And you have to do things. And above all, gaming, because I explain this, because Alekino with MAVUIKA has followed by an Alekino Monopiro by Alekino Kazuha, MAVUIKA, Bennett or Xilonen, instead of in this case Kazuha, and it's not bad, improves the previous Pyro Monkey, but really Alekino Prime technically. And I'll only talk about Alekino as he'll be here in a few days too. And there's also been talk. A lot of Alekino by Citlali and by this Monkey Pyro as it locates sub DPS. I would say that Alekino remains, still with its absolute prime of the old team, i.e. if you do the rotation right and play. Alekino Furina Kazuha Bennett Alekino as such has not improved its Monopyro when it places sub DPS above Xiangling if you have improved but not above your next prime computer. Norifica mentioned the team of Navia. Navia is not that it has also improved an insanity but a lot. People are now playing as Navia Xilonen or Kiori. Preferably Gilonen MAVUIKA Bennett here. I explain where it is and there is the improvement because it is similar. Alekino really the best in slot. Of Navia is still Navia, Gilonen, Furina and Don Benito. But there were many people who to liberate. A Furina for other teams thing that Citlali allows you. But that's another video and another story. He basically played Xiangling here and played Xiangling Bennett Tiori Bark Xilonen, one of Thap, 2 and Navia, and now putting MAVUIKA here improves equipment. Improves off-field damage and improves the buff to the character in the field. So much for the parchment set, though careful if you hit the parchment with Xilonen because obviously 80 of elemental damage, 40 and 40 of each set do not accumulate. They accumulate, but MAVUIKA did come to improve the variant of the sub-variant of people who I wanted to free Furina and I played with Xiangling, but the best in slot is still with Furina, and she's still with being better the team with Furina and not with MAVUIKA, so it is still in the initial category of this honorary position and the last honorary position, and we are already entering the teams that you want to hear. The strong is Chaska Chaska if it has improved with MAVUIKA Chaska, as Carrie said. Today I played a Furina core, an Electro, and Bennett mainly Auroron because what she does is use the elements of the equipment, even if they are emo, to replicate elements EU. The clean chain of Auroron Furina Bennett made Furina and Auroron, and Auron. Chaska's Electro and Hydro hits reapply Electro, charged enemies and little hits. Pyro jumped because there is a Burnett on the team because Chaska made some Pyro hits. Those Pyro hits, they vaporized, and that's the current roof of Chaska. Now there are people who want to try Bennett. MAVUIKA Citlali and Chaska. The reality is that the area of Citlali does not complement well with Chaska. But not only that the chain of reactions does not apply well, summary, do not melt if any you. Maybe a cryo healer team that applies well cryo. There aren't many Charlotte does, but a few seconds at first. Iona does it, but very badly with the ulti within an area, and very few. Or there was a cryo healer who applied a lot of cryo to the beast at the level of redoing the app. Sidlali's own because there'd be some meltdown team with Chaska. The reality is that Chaska has improved a little with MAVUIKA, but the teams are not so consistent and really the core of me. Chaska reactions is more of a party is a multicolor rainbow, whatever God wants see. And the core cleans today the super vaporized with pyro. The truth is that I would recommend that if you are going to play MAVUIKA and Sidlali in a team, it is not with Chaska. You remove Chaska, and you put in 2 other supporting characters, and you have the MAVUIKA carry with Sidlali with his absolute Pika. Or there are other variants of Melt without Chaska that can also improve, but honorific. To finish Chaska, who's not bad with Sidlali MAVUIKA, but gets very close to his previous team. If we get into the strong, all these are things that are good. They have his own cons, but now that he's coming crazy, number 1, Raiden's team is working perfectly. Yes, the Raiden National, but with Furina instead of Yellen, it works perfectly. And we have new pick roof of the Raiden National. For lovers of Raiden National, here is a very important thing to explain, and is that number 1, there are people who ask, is worth the new heart of the Raiden National is Raiden Furina MAVUIKA. Venice Furina is perfect because it hits without having to. Giving normal attacks like Yellen gives you very good uptime, gives you harm inflicted on the entire team. Because I don't go with Yellen, well, MAVUIKA's core is different from Xiangling's, and Xiangling's force. The perfect rotation Raiden National if it forces you to give some normal attacks, but playing this. Another team with MAVUIKA not only harms you to give normal attacks, but also damage inflicted that gives you Yellen to a single character 50% versus the harm inflicted on you Furina all. The team 100% is an abysmal difference. The Raiden National is not played with Furina because no. You can, because Xiangling applies so much pyro that if you go with Furina, you don't vaporize, but with this equipment, yes, with which to play Yellen would be to seriously harm the team by both the application and, for the damage inflicted, all the equipment, as in this very specific case, to force you to give basic. That would hurt and waste damage and time from the team. And another question that says a lot. Since there's MAVUIKA, I can play Zilonan instead of Bennett. We've been testing him too, and the answer is I do not recommend it because it can be played is to say you can play it, and the team is functional. Would recommend more playing Zilonan above, let's say, in Bennett's place. Over playing Yellen on this team instead of Furina, then it's solid, and the team doesn't look. But the comparison with Bennett is the following. Bennett on this team gives you the foul. Shilonen's absolute roof of damage I could compare versus Bennett, which is a 4-star Shilonen C2 and Shilonen C2 on this computer. First, the elemental damage bonus from Shilonen, you will not apply it correctly, or if you wear it Archaic Petra, you're just gonna be able to stick the Bufo in a single element. Because I say Archaic Petra because MAVUIKA on this team goes Parchment, and if Shilonen goes normally, you have it built with Parchment. This is very interesting to comment on for you to learn. Really, things that happen to all Genshin Impact players every day with teams. Then you would have to take Shilonen Petra, the Petra Activate. It is just an element, for example, to Raiden's Electro, or Furina's Hydro, and not only that, but the C2 is going to give you 45 of attack on MAVUIKA, 45% life to Furina, and the bonus of the C2 from Shilonen to Raiden is give power and reduce 6 seconds of cooldown your ulti, but have 18 minus 6 12 seconds of the cooldown in his ulti, but MAVUIKA still has 18 cooldown, so it doesn't improve you much more. And I explain all this because the tests I did on Shilonen C2 versus Bennett on the new Raiden, National Shilonen C2 was just approaching the performance of his own team with Bennett. The same rotational damage numbers, then Bennett is still better than Shilonen on the team. And if you compare it to C2, imagine the difference of damage that there is only with Shilonen Chero, which is the most of your cases. Then final conclusions, we have new pick of the Raiden National. Raiden Furina MAVUIKA Bennett is the roof of this new Raiden National upgrade as a team, and the table team's goal, but Furina here is 1,000 times better than Yellen, and Bennett is quite better than the Shilonen, although if you want to release a Bennett Shilonen C2 on this team more or less meets not bad, it's wrong what happens at the set of previews and change it, so that it can improve, and contribute a little more because you will carry 2 previews and do not accumulate, but Raiden National for the B. Raiden National lovers have it, and above all this is very interesting, all this is proven obviously with talents at 7, still imagine when we have talents at 10 and again everything. This is tested with MAVUIKA's cone, imagine when you can test the C2 that at a height record. This video is not your video, the C2 if on a team that along with the Raiden National surprised me. Quite, and in fact, here mentioned MAVUIKA surprised me much more than I expected to see. Which surprised me most in fact, and Jubilet. Yes gentlemen, and Jubilet has his old Korea Monohydro, which is an Jubilet Furina Kazuha and Shilonen. And this is very interesting because that is the current team. The strongest game is literally the strongest team in Genshin Impact is the best team in the world. Noiviled's game, I thought that here MAVUIKA was coming, and was going to give one more variant of the team, but you wouldn't get over your absolute roof because here comes MAVUIKA, we switch to Kazuha. MAVUIKA out of the field is going to vaporize because there's a lot of hydro. Of course I was going to give the buffos to team in this case, same problem with the parchment set with Shilonen, should have Shilonen. Archaic Petra and that Petra buffo plus MAVUIKA's parchment set for the 2 hydros that are Furina and Noivilet, care, little joke the damage that may be but above considering. The cone, as MAVUIKA explained, will give 40% of the damage inflicted on Noivilet since with Shilonen you win the 200 combat points, and this is shrinking because the buffo MAVUIKA gives it to you, the character in field, and then it goes down to 10 seconds and only 20%, and from 10 seconds up to 20 seconds is already reduced from 20% to 0, and those vaporized outside the field that can be more than done. Enka vaporized outside the field with a MAVUIKA cone with crown in its elementary ability as the surprise of seeing this team is basically that I didn't take into account at all the damage to the ulti of MAVUIKA with the Shilonen buffos and the harm inflicted on Furina and Furina. You can get here 500,000 or MAVUIKA as well built with C2 and all the history you don't. I'm counting on it, you can get almost 1 million with the MAVUIKA court, and then MAVUIKA, that we remember that as a support, eliminates 20% of the defense of the enemies with which. This can make all the teams that talk about this video have another crazier roof. Even if it still does, but the reality is that this Noivilet team with MAVUIKA still doesn't test the C22. I don't think it beats the best in slot of the best team in the game with Kazuha, but it seems to me that, yes, is the second best variant team of Noivilet AOE, categorizing gold teams as in others. We'd say the roof now has it, and the 7, and it'll get Noivilet then MAVUIKA, DPS to Melted then an Arlecchino. Then I'd say teams that will enter this video and I'll talk. Noivilet equipment variant would say that the second best variant is this new variant. With MAVUIKA it's crazy now, we do get into what everyone is hoping, it's the Fi. 2 teams that have improved most with MAVUIKA, and not only that but will literally enter the top 4 and 5 best teams of the game, below Noivilet Arlecchino and MAVUIKA. Good Noivilet and Arlecchino as DPS and DPS teams of MAVUIKA herself. Well, Moalani and Kinich ladies and gentlemen, Kinich has improved a donkey and will directly be the 4th best team in the Yao game below the previous 3 that I told you are gods. Kinich is the 4th best. Cut of the whole game, Kinich Furina MAVUIKA Bennett. Gentlemen, Kinich is the one that has improved the most. MAVUIKA teams, because as you see in many of these teams there are some problems. With MAVUIKA's parchment set outside the Kinich field is quite the opposite to this day. Kinich's teams were already very strong with C-angling, but there was no character that I could activate the scroll correctly to Kinich now in this core again without yet having tested the C2. Imagine what this team can do with MAVUIKA C2. for 20% reduction. Defense of enemies has basically improved by winning the parchment set 40% of 40, elemental damage 40%, damage inflicted from MAVUIKA's passive correct and perfect application already. That his team previously had a problem and is that Xiangling applied a lot of pyro Kinish a lot. Inside and Furina made reverse vaporized but didn't make bloom bubbles, so that then Xiangling make crack, and that also activates more stacks of Kinish's weapon that gives him 60% damage. Inflicted in field, now the team has a perfect core and synergy of reactions now. Furina makes reverse vaporized, making blows of 100, 120 or more. Some blow of 200 I have seen. There activates his damage inflicted on the entire team. Perfectly MAVUIKA puts 40 elemental damage into it. And 40 damage inflicted on Kinish MAVUIKA not only does its damage outside the field, some vaporize. Even not only with the perfect core and rotation vaporizes its ulti on the Furina, Hydro, plus the Bennett's Bufo plus Furina's Bufo, and you can also put a million into this team with A. But everything is measured so that Kinish can always have the 5 strokes in field, 6 if you do the perfect rotation of Kinish, which is very difficult and very complicated, and the damage by rotation. There's no sense in anyone who's capable of playing Kinish Furina MAVUIKA Bennett leaving in the car. Comments the absolute cinema that is playing that team. The enemies get off 2 or 3 cannons of Kinish if they have not yet left with St. Peter after throwing the first ulti of MAVUIKA, and you gives time to go in with Kinish. They don't last longer than Kinish's first and second cannons. It's crazy, the damage of this equipment, and then, on the other hand, another team that has also improved not so much because it improved. This little parchment and archaic Petraset problem is going to happen, or something like that is Moalani Ine. My opinion under Kinish stays as the 5th best team in the game, improving all of the above. Existing and basically Moalani played the core of Moalani, Furina, Xilonen, and Xiangling, and now you can play the Moalani Furina core for hydro consonants and the harm inflicted from Furina. Xilonen MAVUIKA guess MAVUIKA. During the beginning of rotation you will vaporize the hits, and you're going to vaporize the ulti MAVUIKA, and just before entering with Moalani you're going to switch to Furina. Healer motive for you to apply only MAVUIKA, and Moalani vaporize. Moalani vaporizes everything, and I'm sure you're going to put in a million in a P you've all put in, and I've put in 1,300,000 to be able to put more than 1.5 million in some cases or some concrete bosses. That lowered their defense 2 million as Moalani in the case of the current Abyss as fair. Bukuzar and the Wolf, I shot them without having to stick the ulti alone with 2 bites. 700,000, and that Moalani you're looking at on screen is Chero have disappeared I haven't had. That throw needed the 3rd bite that you have to Chero, nor the ulti only 2 bites Moalani currently. Despite the bugs you have, and you continue to have in some cases, the ulti is followed. Going around with St. Peter for a ride, and when he marks his enemies sometimes the torpedo, for you to do damage multi-tariot, does not jump, and does not vaporize despite all that Moalani today of all. Today it's scary, and now we're going to end up with MAVUIKA carries teams. This is very interesting, and it's very easy at the same time, because MAVUIKA carry has a team that her team. And there's a lot of questions about whether it works with Yellen, from whether he's going to normal attacks on whether or not now. Talks about the variants of Sidley or Xilonen if you don't have Sidlali or Xilonen. We're going to see MAVUIKA core team that's going to load MAVUIKA, Sidlali, Xilonen, and Don Benito. Second best team of the game below Nivelet and above Alekino, and very careful, because if you do wrong the rotation doesn't melt. If you stay doing a very strange damage to Sidley, practically looks like he's not on the team and he doesn't exist because that's the main team. Doubt number 1 works with Yellen, not because MAVUIKA is not going to normal attacks. Loaded the damage difference is 80%, which means I won't recommend or make a MAVUIKA attack. Normal, and not only that, but to keep in mind that the melt reaction is stronger than the V. Vaporized reaction, then melt the ulti making 1,000,000, and finish a room or a boss is a lot better than vaporizing an ulti and putting then 600, 700, which is a little less damage if anything. You do everything perfect, and that aside from MAVUIKA allowing you to throw the elemental and then the ulti in. Some rotation, and yet with Yellen, you're going to have to give Vasikidos then in any case. Number 1 doesn't go with Yellen, and it won't go to normal attacks anyway. I'd go with Furina instead. Sidlari number 1, number 2 goes Yes, or yes, loaded. I am so sorry whoever wants to play it. In field, you will have to play it loaded and number 3 variants. The Citlali variant would be Furina. Furina is the best variant you can put instead of Citlali if you don't have any. Of the two, think about not playing the carry and think about playing the support for many other teams. Because it's going to bring you a lot, because a Raiden must have a Moalani. A Kinish must have a Novilette. You must have Navia, Arlecchino, Tartaglia, Chaska. Some of these DPS must have, and they'll get a little better with Mavuika. And then if you don't have it, Shilonin, you can put Kazuha or Kachina by the knockdown Buddhism points, and the set of Basemech, Parchment or Kazuha for his buffos. That in the end would be, let's say, the mirror of characters that you may not have. Mavuika's team, if you look perfectly at it, is Arlecchino's team. The Mavuika, Citlali, Shilon in Bennett, if you don't have Citlali and or Shilon in the core, would be Mavuika. Furina, Katsuha and Bennett, who is Arlecchino's team, so basically is the team of Arlecchino, and good could be played as I say no, Kachina, and instead of Shilon, Ini. But obviously it's quite worse, just like another Geo who can apply the scroll to you and has knockdown bulletin points for Mavuika to have the ulti have more combat points than Al. The story, but the prime of Mavuika DPS is this last and to end quiet, that I will do alone. A video of the Mavuika DPS team explaining the correct rotation when you have to pull each. This is just the video above. Teams, so you know how to get an idea of all the teams that Mavuika can have at. There are variants of teams where I have seen people playing because Mavuika with 2 cryos or something like in Verza Melts. I have seen variants of Overload with Chevrus. The reality is that if you are going to play about each with Chevrus, what I'm going to recommend is that you don't spend the Mavuika, play Chevrus and Angler. Fishla Baidu and play full 4 stars the Overload of Chevrus, that will already burst you a room. And it's going to play very well, and it's very powerful. And the same if you're going to play pure Melts of Mavuika with 2 Pyros and 2 Cryos or something for that to play Bennett, Xianglan, Rosaria, Kaya, that Kaya's free and Rosaria will have some wild. And you already have a team that is going to get off. The Halls and free Mavuika, better to play everything that was explained in the video because is going to give much more potential and power in your account, is going to improve more equipment for the Genshin players, will see bigger numbers that you like, and you will take better advantage of teams and especially Mavuika. So this is Mavuika's equipment video. As I say, I leave the comments that you have already to the end which specific team you want to have video, but it is very possible that at least one of Mavuika DPS explaining more specifically the construction team, how each character works, weapons, sets, variants, and all the rotation that is very important. And above all, apart from the Mavuika DPS, it is quite possible that at least Moalani, Kinish and Raiden, if you make a new video of each of the 3 then already white-haired Nubaleches, because it makes a lot of illusion. We leave comments and see if I also make video. Little more, leave a good like a good time, subscribe, leave a good comment for the fact, and for enjoying watching the channel. Care a lot. To have very good day and bye.